This video is made in response to someone who was talking about how we know what the default position should be on any claim. It was someone who was advocating that the acceptance of God, how do we know that's not the default position? How do we know that? How do we know where the burden of proof lies? So I just thought I'd post my ramblings on the subject. The burden of proof. What is it? What is the burden of proof? This is something I thought about a lot recently as I was trying to understand why we consider some things to have the burden of proof and not others. For example, this came from a call I heard on the Atheist Experience. The caller was considering why the position of a lack of a belief in God didn't require a burden of proof, but the belief in a God did have the burden of proof. And I guess I knew the answer to be the positive claim, the one where, yes, there is a God, that is a claim that has the burden of proof. But the way he framed his argument made it difficult for me to exactly understand why I'm withholding belief in a God, why that's not a claim. So essentially, the conclusion I arrived at is any claim requires a burden of proof. And yes, any claim, as in any claim, as in any claim, has the burden of proof. That is the key there. Absolutely any claim has the burden of proof. Now, there's an important distinction here. Just because a claim has the burden of proof, which all claims do, doesn't mean that another person, another entity, a debate opponent, what have you, doesn't mean that they're going to require that proof. I like to start with an example. If some random stranger comes up to you on the street and says to you, hey, a completely random stranger, and just says to you, hey, I just bought a car today. Now, that is an ordinary claim. We know that cars exist. We know that, although it is a big purchase, people buy cars every day. I don't know the exact statistic, but it's probably a very large number of cars that are bought just in America every single day. So that is what we would call an ordinary claim. Now, does this ordinary claim have the burden of proof? Yes, it does. Doesn't matter what kind of claim it is, ordinary, extraordinary, doesn't matter. It has the burden of proof. Now that's a struggle for a few reasons. If every single claim has a burden of proof, that means we're going to be walking around, and every time someone says anything to us, whether it's a person introducing themselves to us, saying, hi, this is me, this is my daughter, that's a claim that this girl is this man's daughter. Are we going to require evidence anytime someone says anything to us? No, we are not. Because although it's a generally good assumption that people are truthful, yes, all claims have the burden of proof. That does not mean that we have to require it. Just because a claim has the burden of proof doesn't mean that the person who the claim is being presented to is going to require that this burden of proof be met in order to accept the claim. You could accept the claim tentatively for purposes of conversation, or you could just accept it. Going back to the example, some random stranger on the street comes up to you, you have no idea who they are, and they just say to you, I bought a car today. That you will most likely just accept this. And I haven't figured out the exact right way to say this, but in a sense, I see it as you're going to accept this because you don't care. It will not affect you if this claim is true or false. And it's easier just to go along for the purposes of maybe conversation or what have you to accept the claim as true. And I would formalize the statement, I don't care, as whether this claim is true or false is inconsequential to you. That is the key there. If a claim is inconsequential to the listener, they will most likely accept it because it doesn't matter to them whether the claim is true or false. It does not affect their life. They don't have to change anything about their life if this claim is true or false. They don't have to take political action if this claim is true or false. They don't have to take financial action if this claim is true or false. It is inconsequential to them. For the purposes of conversation, they will accept the claim. And this is how we deal with most claims. Most claims that are presented to us are inconsequential to us. If someone introduces someone else as their daughter, you're going to accept that, because at the end of the day, at this point, you're just meeting this person. It doesn't matter if this person's actually their daughter. Here's another important bit. If it does become consequential, if any claim that someone is presenting starts to matter to you for some reason, I'll give an example in a moment, that is when we start to require the evidence. Skeptics don't go around requiring every claim they come up against, because there's a lot of them throughout the day, throughout a normal day, meet their burden of proof. This is mostly because it's a generally good assumption that people are being truthful, and most claims that are presented to us are, at the end of the day, inconsequential. Default position. What should the default position be? I heard this on a call on the AP Experience with Matt Dillahunty. What should be the default position on any claim? When presented with a claim, such as P, you have three options. And what I will look into is which one of those three options is the default position. And I think the main contention here is that people don't realize that there are three options, or what the three options are aren't clearly defined, because when you make a claim, the three options are: I accept P, I do not accept P, and I accept not P. The problem is, in everyday conversation, I do not accept P and I accept not P sound very similar. When most people say that they don't believe in a God, that sounds like I do not accept P, P being the claim of a God exists. But what they actually mean is that they are taking the actual default position on that topic, which is I do not accept P. I accept P implies I do not accept not P. And I accept not P implies I do not accept P. The true default position for any claim is I do not accept P and I do not accept not P. This feels wrong. This just feels wrong to us because we know when we're walking through everyday life, it can certainly feel like when people are presenting claims to you, and there's a lot of them, almost any statement someone says to you is a claim, like, hi, this is my daughter, or hey, I just bought a car today. It doesn't feel like the default position is to say, I do not accept that, I do not accept that, I do not accept that, I do not accept that. That doesn't feel like the default position for most claims. The default position feels like it should be, okay, I accept that tentatively. Or, yeah, I'll accept that for purposes of conversation. So sometimes it can feel like I accept that is the default position. So it can feel like if I accept that is not the default position, that would cause a lot of problems for you, because as you're walking through everyday life, you will not be able to accept any claims. The reason it feels like for ordinary claims, the default position should be, I accept this until maybe it's proven wrong. Because it's an ordinary claim, I can accept it until it's proven wrong. And why for other claims, like extraordinary claims, like a God exists, or even this particular God exists, they have the burden of proof clearly because it's an extraordinary claim. So I got really upset with this, and it's like, why do some claims have the burden of proof and other claims don't? That's a problem, because then how do we know whether a claim is truly ordinary or extraordinary? These feel like colloquial terms that don't really have clear definitions. But then I realized something. Every claim does have the burden of proof. The default position for every claim truly is, I do not accept P, and I do not accept not P. P being the claim. The reason it feels like for ordinary claims the default position should be, sure, I accept that. Oh, you bought a car today? Sure, I accept that. Oh, this is your daughter. Okay, I accept that. It's because you're already weighing evidence. You're already weighing evidence in your head. Basically, the way I look at it, instantaneously, you are at the default position of, I do not accept this claim. And then your mind goes through the process of weighing the evidence. Someone comes up to you and says, I bought a car today. Okay, the evidence. People exist. Cars exist. Buying a car is a relatively ordinary process. So your brain weighs that evidence basically immediately. With that evidence, although this may not meet the full burden of proof, it's still evidence, and it's enough for you to accept this claim. Although the evidence is insufficient to fully prove it to me, I'll accept it for the purposes of conversation because it is inconsequential. Now I want to get into when claims can become consequential. And although the evidence on the matter hasn't changed, the fact that it matters to you whether this claim is true or false is what drives you to require that evidence. If someone comes up to you and says, hey, I bought a car today, great, I accept that. And the money I got to buy that car came from this investment opportunity that I think you should be a part of. Okay, now I care. Now you have to prove a number of things to me. First, that you got the car. You actually bought the car. Maybe some evidence, a receipt, whatever evidences you feel until it is sufficient to warrant belief in that claim. And now you've also got to prove to me that this money came from this investment, and now we're getting into the specifics of how exactly you prove things. That is not important here. The point is that every claim does in fact have the burden of proof, and that doesn't exactly become clear until accepting that claim is consequential to the listener. Because if the claim is inconsequential, it's relatively easy to just accept a claim given the assumption, you could even call that evidence, that generally most people are truthful. So, to sum up, every claim has the burden of proof. That doesn't mean that the listener is going to require that proof. If the claim is inconsequential to them, then they may not require any evidence. All the evidence they need may just be people are generally truthful. Once that claim becomes consequential to them, aka it matters to them whether that claim is true or false, the listener may end up requiring that the claimer provide evidence to meet that burden of proof. And to settle the matter about what the default position on any claim is, and why for some claims it feels like the default position should just be to accept it for ordinary claims, the fact of the matter is, the truly default position should be to not accept the claim and to not accept the contrary to the claim. But for ordinary claims, your mind instantly evaluates all the available evidence, including the fact that people are generally truthful, is sufficient. So it's not that the default position is to accept ordinary claims. It's that the evidence required to warrant belief in an ordinary claim is much lower and may already exist in your own head. The knowledge that people exist, that cars exist, that people buying cars is a relatively everyday experience. Overall, skeptics aren't running around requiring every claim that they're presented with be supplied with evidence, even though it has the burden of proof. Truly, the default position on anything anyone tells you, don't accept it until there's evidence, unless it doesn't matter to you. If they're trying to sell you something, watch out.